So we just finished up Genesis, and it ended off with the family being in Egypt and Jacob passing away, Joseph passing away. So now we're going to get into some more genealogy fun. Exodus 1:1. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Jacob, each with his household. Exodus 1 and 2. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. 1 and 3. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. 1 and 4. Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. 1 and 5. All the offspring of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt. When it talks about these 70 persons, it doesn't just mean these 12 sons, but the children of the sons as well, right? So his grandkids and everything, they would also be considered of his loins and considered offspring. Exodus 1 and 6. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. We saw the death of Joseph at the end of the book of Genesis. But we didn't see the death of all the brothers or whatever, but that would make sense that they would perish with the passing of time. It's just we didn't see it at the end of Genesis. Exodus 1 and 7. But the descendants of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, and the land was full of them. The Israelites, they were placed in the land of Goshen. Goshen was kind of the most fruitful area of Egypt. And this is sometime after the passing of Joseph and his brothers or whatever. So we're into new descendants, a new era, so to say. So they've been there for a while, and they've been in this really fertile land. And Egypt at that point in time was considered the breadbasket of the world. That's why every time there was a famine, they went down to Egypt to get food, because food was plentiful in Egypt. So they're in the very fruitful area of Egypt, the best of Egypt, and they're just reproducing generation after generation. So there's a lot of them now, and that's going to cause some strife with the locals, with the Egyptians, the ones that invited them in. They're afraid that they're going to be outpopulated, so to say. Not that we haven't heard that one in the modern day with the declining birth rates and all that fun stuff. So kind of a similar parallel from then till now, I guess. Exodus 1 and 8. And now a new king arose over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. So the old Pharaoh has passed away. I think Joseph and the old Pharaoh, they were friends or whatever. And maybe there was multiple pharaohs in the time of Joseph, as Joseph lived a very long time. So now we got a new king who doesn't know Joseph, doesn't know the story of all that has happened before. Or maybe knows the story, but didn't truly experience, didn't truly understand the situation, the gravity of the situation, and the dreams, the visions, and all that stuff, right? So it just, to him, these are just people in his land. There's nothing special. Exodus 1 and 9. He said to his people, behold, the Israelites are too many and too mighty for us, and they outnumber us both in people and in strength. So there's a growing fear or disdain in the eyes of Pharaoh, in the eyes of the king of the land. These Israelites, they're outpopulating them. We got some xenophobia going on. They are afraid of the Israelites, that they're already outnumbering them. They probably have more military strength, and if this keeps going on, the Egyptians will just be wiped off the face of the earth. That they will be the minority in their own land. Exodus 1 and 10. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply more, and should war befall us, they join our enemies, fight against us, and escape out of the land. So we really see the fear here. And we have this idea of dealing shrewdly with them. So they're going to kind of deal poorly with the Israelis, to kind of knock them down and keep them down, to prevent them from getting up and being strong and overcoming them. And then there's this fear of them leaving, escaping the land. When Joseph was running Egypt, he turned a country that was doing okay into a very successful nation that had an excess of food, and they were making money hand over fist with it. So they know that the Israelites are very beneficial to have there, and they do fear the idea of them leaving, returning back to their promised land, and then the benefit of them being in Egypt will be gone, for they know that they do benefit from the Israelis being here. So it's kind of a complex geopolitical situation that is quite fascinating. Exodus 1 and 11. So they set over the Israelites taskmasters to afflict and oppress them with increased burdens. And the Israelis built Pithom and Ramses, a store city for Pharaoh. So here we have these taskmasters, these slave masters, and they've kind of enslaved the Israelites. They've put them to work, and the amount of work that's expected of them is increasing day after day with increasing burdens. They're being very harsh to these Israelis, and being hard enough to try to keep them from getting up, knocking them down, keeping them down, ruling over them, putting them to work, building these cities for the Pharaoh. Exodus 1 and 12. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and expanded, so that the Egyptians were vexed and alarmed because of the Israelites. The conventional normalized thought patterns of suppression and oppression would be that you punish the ideas that you don't want to see. You punish the people that you don't want to see succeed. Bring them down, bring them to a lower level, and that will keep them down. But often we see the reverse, that this persecution and this stress that they're exhibiting on the Israelis is actually uniting them together, bringing the community together, making them stronger than initially thought. And it's having the reverse effect of what they wanted to have happen. And of course the Egyptians are vexed. This is not what they want to see happen, and they've probably done this to other groups and it worked in the way that they desired it to, but in the Israelis it is not working as intended. Exodus 1 and 13. And the Egyptians reduced the Israelites to severe slavery. This looks like it was a progressive system in the sense that at first they were just dwelling in the land, doing their own thing, and maybe the Pharaoh or the taskmasters got them to do some stuff here and there. But this just kept getting more and more severe till we hit this point that we're at now, where the Israelites are slaves and they're being treated very severely in order to break their spirit, to break them down, to prevent them from gaining additional strength and power. For the Egyptians fear the Israelites. Exodus 1 and 14. They made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar, brick, and all kinds of work in the field. All their service was with harshness and severity. It doesn't sound very good, but it probably is a lot worse than it sounds. Like, this is probably just brutal. Just getting through every day. It's like, oh, good, the sun's going down. We're almost done, right? Like, it just... And then before the sun's up, they're probably getting whipped, right? Like, just the harshest of treatment imaginable. A whole day of labor with no breaks and no days off, and just brutal. Exodus 1 and 15. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, of whom one was named Shiphrah, and the other was Puah. 1 and 16. When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women, and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live. It is one thing to abuse someone, or oppress them, or to keep them down. It is quite another. Pharaoh in this instance is promoting the idea, the king of Egypt is promoting the idea of killing the male children. This is a way that he could use to prevent the growth of the Israeli people by preventing the men from coming into being. Exodus 1 and 17. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded, but let the male babies live. It was not love, it was not compassion, it was fear. These women, they feared God. Yeah, the Pharaoh, he can make their lives miserable, he might be able to kill them, whatever. But God has power over the eternal, and that is a lot more terrifying. And I think these women realized the scenario that this just wasn't right. Exodus 1 and 18. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing and allowed male children to live? 1 and 19. The midwives answered Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous and quickly delivered. Their babies are born before the midwife comes to them. I think this was a bald-faced lie and not the truth. But what does the Pharaoh know about the women of Egypt? The women of Israel. Genesis 1 and 20. So God dealt with the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very strong. I think God liked what he saw here. He saw these women standing up to the Pharaoh, and that they had a fear of God in them. And he liked that, and he blessed them accordingly. Exodus 1:21. And because the midwives revered and feared God, he made them households of their own. 1:22. Then Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the river, the Nile River, but every daughter you shall allow to live. So he was unable to get these midwives to throw out these male children. So now he's expanded this order, this ruling, to a greater degree to try to remove the birthing of male children into the Hebrew society. Exodus 2 and 1. Now Amram, a man of the house of Levi, which is the priestly tribe, went and took his wife, Jochebed, a daughter of Levi. Exodus 2 and 2. And the woman became pregnant and bore a son. And when she saw that he was exceedingly beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. Here we have a woman defying the rules of the Pharaoh, defying the king of the land, keeping her son and deciding not to kill him. This was a great risk to her, but an even greater risk to her son. Exodus 2 and 3. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark or a basket made of bulrushes or papyrus, making it watertight, by dabbling it with bitumen and pitch. Then she put the child in it, laid it among the rushes by the brink of the river Nile. In many ways, she is doing what the king has asked, doing what the Pharaoh wanted, having the male sons of the Hebrews cast into the river. Although she made this raft, this little boat, this ark, to protect the child, there is no way to know whether or not he would be able to survive. For this would just give him a little longer, an opportunity to live a little bit longer, unless an intervention was made to save him. For a child on their own is certain to die. She has done everything that she can to protect her child, but she can no longer hide his existence. Exodus 2 and 4. And his sister, Miriam, stood some distance away to learn what would be done to him. I do not know what the age difference is between her and the child, but I'm sure it was very tragic to see her brother being whisked away in this river, not knowing what would befall him, not knowing what would happen, and likely being at that state of youth where the understanding of the passages of life and death are unknown. So that would be truly sad. Exodus 2 and 5. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the bank. She saw the ark among the rushes, and sent her maid to fetch it. This male child could have been the only one, for under the Pharaoh's direction, it is likely that the rest of the male children that would be born in that generation were cast in the river or killed by the midwives, so that this would be the only male Hebrew in existence, and God needs to deliver him for the future's sake and for the sake of the people that he made a promise with, the descendants of Abraham, the descendants of Isaac, the descendants of Israel and his 12 sons. Exodus 2 and 6. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby cried. And she took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." So they have found this child, they found this ark. Opening it up, there was this beautiful baby, and he started to cry. She knew it was one of the Hebrews, but she took pity on it. Exodus 2 and 7. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse of the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" This almost sounds like a setup, and I mean it could be that they knew that the Pharaoh's daughter might have mercy on this child, that if they released him at the right time, that she would see him and whatever. Because I mean, you know, the baby's sister is over here talking to the Pharaoh's daughter, so they had to have known that she came to this generalized area probably around this time. So I mean, this could have been a setup as a method of protecting this child. But it could also be the other aspect, which would be the inverse, in that they didn't know what was going to happen. They just, you know, it was time to release the child and have it in God's hands, whether or not someone saves him or not. So I don't know. And even then, even if they knew that the Pharaoh's daughter was going to be here in this area, they wouldn't know with complete certainty whether or not she would be able to deliver the baby or even have the desire to begin with. Exodus 2 and 8. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go," and the girl went and called the child's mother. This is actually kind of hilarious, because it's like, you know, "Oh, I've never seen a baby like that before." Meanwhile, it's her son. She's got to look after him. Oh, man. But, you know, sometimes stuff just works out like that. Exodus 2 and 9. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed it. So not only does she still have her child to look after, but she's being paid her wages while looking after him. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool how this is all working out, that they're providing a method for looking after this child. The one that, you know, she's ready to toss him into the river and he'd be gone. And but he's not. He's still in her arms and gets to grow up, and she gets to nurse him. So that's wonderful. Exodus 2 and 10. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called him Moses, for she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." I guess the part of this that's kind of crazy is that we got this child growing up, and the child is presented to Pharaoh's daughter, and that she can kind of raise him as her own son or whatever. But we have this mother and this sister, you know, presumably looking after this child, but he has no idea that they are his parents and his sister. So that's kind of crazy. It's got to be a weird childhood, growing up not really knowing what's going on. Exodus 2 and 11. One day after Moses was grown, it happened that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of Moses' brethren. 2 and 12. He looked this way and that way, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So Moses saw the state of his brethren, the state of the other Hebrews. He saw this man abusing one of his brethren, and he waited a little, He looked both ways, killed the man, buried him in the sand. Exodus 2 and 13. And he went out the second day and saw two Hebrew men quarreling and fighting. And he said to the unjust aggressor, "Why are you striking your comrade?" 2 and 14. And the man said, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely this thing is known." Even though Moses looked to his left and looked to his right and looked around and saw that no one was looking and killed this man, it seems that these other guys, they knew what happened. They knew that Moses was a murderer, that he killed that Egyptian. Moses thought he was going to get away with it. He thought, well, there's no body, there's no evidence, there's no witnesses. Nobody knows nothing. But the news of this killing is already known. And it made Moses afraid, for he was a murderer. How long would it be until the family of the man that he killed demanded his blood? The Egyptians would demand his blood for being a murderer. Exodus 2 and 15. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh's presence and took refuge in the land of Midian, where he sat down by a well. Well, there's your answer there. It didn't take very long for the Pharaoh to find out about this and let the manhunt begin. And Moses is on the run, and he's hiding in a well. That's pretty low, hiding in the bottom of a well, just trying to escape the judgment, the just judgment too, right? Like he was a murderer. Exodus 2 and 16. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled their furrows to water their father's flock. 2 and 17. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. So we got these daughters here, these women coming to get the water for their flocks, and these shepherds, these would be some other guys in the area or whatever that are looking to look after their own flock. So they kind of quarreled a little bit, and Moses drove these guys away so that they were able to get their water and get their flocks looked after without having to look after these other guys. It could have been one of those exploitation things too, that it's like they show up there, it's like, hey, get the water for our flocks too, right? Or their sheep or whatever it is, right? And they could exploit these girls at this well, get them to do the work. And that probably happened every day. As we'll see, the father is pretty surprised that they came home so early, and that's because they didn't have to deal with all the baloney involving these other shepherds. Exodus 2 and 18. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How is it that you have come so soon today?" 2:19. They said, "An Egyptian delivered us from the shepherds. Also he drew water for us and watered the flock." 2 and 20. He said to his daughters, "Where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." They got home a lot earlier than expected, and their father's wondering what's going on, what the scenario is. And they let this man help them, but they didn't give him anything in return. And hospitality is kind of a big thing in that area, right? So they want to show proper hospitality to Moses for being the assistant that he was. So this father is getting them to bring him in here. We got to give him a meal. We got to feed this man. Exodus 2 and 21. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. Now you read that and it sounds kind of ridiculous. He feeds the sheep one day and he's married the next. But he dwelt with this man for a time, and the guy probably enjoyed his character, liked to have him around. He was a helpful fella. Moses, he was beneficial to this man, so that's just kind of how that kind of turned out, that his daughter would marry Moses. It wasn't just a one-day thing. Exodus 2 and 22. And she bore a son, and he called his name Gershom, meaning expulsion or a stranger there. For he said, I have been a stranger and a sojourner in a foreign land. From what we see from the time of Abraham on, is this family, as their descendants are born, they never really get into the land. They're always wanderers. They're always strangers in the land, sojourning around, never really having that permanent dwelling place, a land that they could call their own. Yes, there is the promised land, and they have made it there a few times, but they've only stayed there for limited durations and then being kicked out and having to move somewhere else and then maybe making it back at a later date and time. And Moses, I think, really feels this. I don't know if he necessarily knew at this juncture in time what his family history was. He knew he was a Hebrew, but he was raised by the Pharaoh's daughter. So his experience was very different than the rest of his brethren. And I think the name of his son here is a reflection of his own circumstance and experience with life. You know, he's kind of an exile of Egypt, which would have been his homeland, but it's not really the homeland of like his people. Exodus 2:23. However, after a long time, nearly 40 years, the king of Egypt died, and the Israelites were sighing and groaning because of the bondage. They kept crying, and their cry because of the slavery ascended to God. 2:24. And God heard their sighing and groaning, and earnestly remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. 2:25. God saw the Israelites and took knowledge of them and concerned himself about them, knowing all, understanding, remembering all. The people, the children of Israel, are suffering. God hears their suffering and he has his promises that he needs to fulfill. Moses is separated from them. He's apart. He's in a different land. And God needs to have a way, a method to deliver these people from the hands of the Egyptians and to return them to the promised land. And Moses might be the guy for the job.